Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the Insiders. This week, we're talking about what's the number one issue in the country: inflation and gas prices. It's having a big effect with the economy. It's making an impact at the kitchen tables across the state. Chuck, what do you think the impact will be going forward on the elections?
Well, certainly, I think gas prices going up is always the biggest issue because it's advertised everywhere. People see it immediately. It's what other price is displayed as prominently and as many places as gas prices. There it is right in front of you. And then you go to the pump and everybody knows how much they pay for gas because they buy it every week. So it is a huge issue and people are bothered by it. So, generally the party in power gets blamed. So there's going to be, there's definitely going to be some impact on Democrats. You'll see different things. So, for example, the governor of Texas has got 4 miles of trucks backed up, which is hurting logistics coming through Texas. Is anybody going to know about that? I doubt it. But this may be a little bit different this year. I mean, people, I think, generally feel that inflation and in particular, the most visible element, gas prices, will be blamed on Democrats. But I think people realize that a lot of this has to do with the war in Ukraine. And I think that people in the United States have about had it up to their hairline, and that's pretty high when you come talk to a guy like me, about Vladimir Putin and what he's doing. I think that you notice that Joe Biden's poll numbers just went up, ticked up a little bit. And I'll tell you what, presidents, when they're facing international challenges that rise to the level almost of war, are generally given a pretty good, what would you call it, slack by the people. And I think they realize that Putin is a lot behind this. And I think that issue depends upon how it plays out. Obviously, if the war over there is resolved and gas prices drop, that would be helpful. I don't think that's going to happen. But the fact that this war may actually ramp up may actually play out better. So I guess I would talk about inflation. Yes, if you look at that in a vacuum, it's definitely negative for Democrats in the fall. However, you put it in the context of why and wherefore around the world here. I think Americans are fed up with Putin, and they see more and more of these children and old people and just heart-wrenching stories. They've about had it. And I wonder if we're not going to see a much even greater involvement by the United States. And I think that the indirect result of what's causing the inflation may actually give a benefit to President Biden, which of course helps all Democrats.
Well, inflation is the number one issue in the country right now. And it looks like it's actually going to be getting worse. The producer price index, which is what companies pay to manufacture the goods that they sell, is actually rising at a faster rate than inflation. And that usually foretells what lies ahead. So it looks like inflation is actually going to be getting worse. It's not going away anytime soon. It's not temporary, as the Biden administration first tried to tell us. And it's not Putin's fault, as they keep trying to say. Yeah, I think Putin has some responsibility for it, but most of the increase in prices, particularly for gas, came long before the sanctions were adopted, rightfully so, against Russia in the war in Ukraine. But I think inflation is going to be a heavy weight around the neck of Democrats coming up this year, and you can tell they think so too, because they're quickly trying to jettison a bunch of policies that they've had before. They in the past criticized President Trump for using the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and yet now they've tapped it. They're allowing for ethanol 15 in the summer, which normally we don't do because that increases pollution. But who cares? We got to try to keep those gas prices down. Some renegade Democrats in Washington, D.C. are trying to suspend the federal gas tax for 6 months because they are worried about that gas price. That big sign that everyone drives by down Main Street is the impact that that's having on them and the impact that it's going to have on the election. So I think this is not only the top issue in the country at the moment, I think it's going to be an even bigger deal in the fall, and that's not good news for the Democrats.
Do you want to surprise that Scott would think it's not good news for Democrats? I think it doesn't help, but you did see, Scott says that this is so important, and yet you did see a significant uptick in Joe Biden's numbers. If that is such a big issue, tell me then, why did that happen? And I'll tell you why it happened. Because people in this country realize that the president he has a limited amount of things that he can do with regard to inflation, and he has a limited number of things that he can do with regard to gas prices. But he does run the international affairs and make sure that he keeps us safe. And by the way, I think Americans are now thinking, is he keeping Ukrainians safe? Watch those poll numbers and see how they rise. The good thing about an insider is you don't just look at the surface. You look underneath to see what directions, what might be happening behind this. And I think this Putin thing, keep an eye on it. Joe Biden's numbers are rising. And I'll tell you what, Putin's numbers are slipping. I'll tell you what, I don't think that guy is going to be in power and perhaps not even alive in a couple of years. So keep an eye on what's happening. I think the fall may have a lot of other elements to it.
Well, let's hope you're right about Putin. We'll see about prices and the impacts on the Democrats.
See you next time.